evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Joining me today is Miss CJ Hero. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are the headlines.
There's increasing pressure on the government of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to impose a nationwide lockdown as new coronavirus cases and deaths held close to record highs today.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said there is a good chance that Metro Manila and 4 nearby areas, or NCR Plus, may shift to less strict general community quarantine status by May 14, following improvements in the country's healthcare utilization rates.
More than 300 people were wounded today in renewed clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police in Jerusalem, according to Palestinian medics, as an Israeli celebration of its 1967 takeover of the city threatened to further inflame tensions.
And a 28-year-old man was shot dead near the international departure terminal at the Vancouver International Airport. EBC Bureau Chief Thomas I. Leitner will give us the update.
First, there's increasing pressure on the government of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to impose a nationwide lockdown as new coronavirus cases and deaths held close to record highs today. India recorded more than 4,000 coronavirus deaths in a day for the first time, and more states imposed lockdowns Saturday in a desperate bid to halt the devastating new surge. India, suffering from one of the worst outbreaks in the world, reported nearly 370,000 fresh infections and more than 3,700 new deaths today. The devastating wave has overwhelmed India's healthcare system, and experts have said the official figures for cases and fatalities are much lower than the actual numbers. The Indian outbreak has spread to some of its neighbors, with Nepal reeling from a worrying spike in cases. Because of the outbreak in the Himalayan nation, China will also set up a separation line on the summit of Mount Everest, which straddles the China-Nepal border to avoid possible infections by climbers from Nepal. According to state media, dozens have been taken ill from the Everest base camp in recent weeks.
Here in the Philippines, the Octa Research Group on Monday urged the government to remain cautious in deciding on new quarantine classifications come May 15 to sustain the fruits of the strict community quarantine in the National Capital Region. In a Laging Handa briefing, Octa Research Fellow Professor Ranjit Rai said their group would support the government whether it extends the modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, or MECQ, for 1 to 2 more weeks. Watch this.
The trend is downward. The trend is downward for the whole region and the NCR Plus. And this is good for all of us. But as we have also noted, the average daily attack rate is still high for many cities in the NCR. In fact, only Navotas is below the critical level. So this is something that we need to look into. Second, the positivity rate is still high at 14%. Okay, and we're hoping that in the next few days it will further improve. A third thing that we need to also look into, as Dr. Butch has also mentioned, is the fact that ICU occupancy is still quite high. So yes, we are healing. Yes, we're trending in the right direction, but we're still not yet there. So if it was purely, and we can understand, no, if government will have discussions about extending the MECQ, really because we need some more time to heal. We also need some more time for government interventions, such as contact tracing, and of course expansion of hospital capacity. Okay, so number one, we will support whatever government decides. Okay, what we're suggesting is caution. What we're suggesting is a calibrated, slow, no, exit strategy, no, so that we can sustain the trends. Now, whether it's a GCQ or an MECQ, the terms don't seem to be as accurate as we understood it last year. What we have now is a very, very flexible MECQ. To answer Red's question, context is important. We are trying to prevent the entry of these new and more contagious variants, no? Very specifically from India. We don't know what the situation is with the sequencing as far as the five individuals who tested positive coming from India. So we want to await that. That's one cautionary. I mean, that's one area of caution that we want to focus on. Number two, government is trying its best, no, to roll out improvements in its COVID response, and many of these improvements will require infrastructure, the training of contact tracing workers, expansion of hospital facilities, and this will take time, no. This is why it might be prudent, no, to consider an extension at this point. Of course, what we feel is important is that the industries, while if we decide to extend for a week or two, the industries that are closed down now can slowly, in a calibrated fashion, be opened up.
President Rodrigo Duterte is expected to announce the next quarantine classification this week. However, the IATF EID has yet to present its final recommendations of quarantine classifications. On Monday, health authorities recorded 8,193 new recovered cases, bringing the total recoveries to 1,030,367. The country's active COVID-19 cases went down to 59,897 despite 6,846 new reported infections, while the death toll reached 18,562 after logging 90 new deaths.
Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said there is a good chance that Metro Manila and four nearby areas, or the NCR Plus, may shift to less strict general community quarantine or GCQ status by May 14, following improvements in the country's healthcare utilization rates. Again, let's listen in.
Rinirespeto po namin ang mga rekomendasyon ng OCTA. Pero ni minsan po, hindi kami nagdedesisyon base sa rekomendasyon ng OCTA. Dahil ang datos naman po nila galing din sa DOH, ang lahat po ng desisyon ng IATF upon recommendation ng mga experts na kasama po natin sa IATF, kasama na po yung mga eksperto na nasa DOH. So wala pa pong desisyon. Ang desisyon po talaga is a collegial decision. Pero kung i-apply po natin yung formula, tignan nyo po, nasa moderate na yung ating healthcare utilization rate. Tapos yung ating attack rate, bumababa na rin po, no? Yung ating are not less than 1 na po, no? Ang importante po, makamit natin ang total health. Kasi kung ang iiwasan lang natin ay yung mga magkakasakit sa COVID o mamamatay sa COVID, mas marami po kasi ang posibleng maghirap dahil sa kahirapan habang tayo po ay nakasaradong ekonomiya. Ulitin ko po, maraming salamat po sa OCTA Research sa inyong mga rekomendasyon. Pero ang katotohanan po, ang pinakikinggan talaga, eksperto ng DOH. At sana po, maintindihan nyo yan dahil hindi lang po DOH ang nagbibigay ng recommendation. It's an entire government approach po. No? So pati po yung mga economists ng NEDA, pinakikinggan natin dahil sila pong nagsasabi na sa cost-benefit analysis, in the end, baka mas marami pong mamatay sa gutom o mas marami pang mahirapan dahil po sa pagkagutom pag pinahaba po natin ang lockdown.
Now, despite the possibility of easing NCR Plus quarantine status, Secretary Roque said borders will remain closed to prevent the spread of new strains of the virus. Currently, foreigners, except diplomats and healthcare workers, are still barred from entering the country. Foreign parents, spouses, and children of Filipinos may enter the country provided they're traveling with a Filipino principal and have a valid entry visa. The Philippines has barred travelers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka until May 14 to curb the spread of the reported double mutant coronavirus strain found in India.
The Commission on Elections here in the Philippines is looking at extending voting hours in next year's national and local elections by at least 2 hours. In a virtual forum today, Commissioner Antonio Cos said the previous 8-hour voting period is no longer applicable to the current situation. He said the number of voters who will cast votes per precinct will also be limited to avoid crowding. He said voting hours will be extended probably up to 10 or even 12. It would also depend on the teachers, he said, but chances are it would be a one-day elections, but with an extended period. Meanwhile, Ko said they are also planning on reverting the number of voters per clustered precinct from 1,000 to 800 or even lower. On the other hand, he said they are also looking at the possibility of acquiring more VCMs to be used in next year's polls. He said the COMELEC is expected to finalize the guidelines for the 2022 polls by the end of this month.
Let's now head on over to Spain, where a state of emergency in place since October is now allowing the Spaniards to travel between regions for the first time in months. And there are celebrations. Here's Beverly Madrid joining us live from Spain. Beverly.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. Spain has lifted a state of emergency in place since October to fight the pandemic, allowing Spaniards to travel between regions for the first time in months. People started dancing on the beach in Barcelona in celebration of the lift of restrictions. Police had to move people on after the last curfew began at 10 p.m. but let them back at midnight when it ended for good. Scenes of unmasked dancing and groups singing in Madrid's central Puerta del Sol square resembled pre-pandemic nightlife, and police had to usher revelers out. While the decision mainly allows Spaniards to travel between regions for the first time in months. Local restaurants will be able to serve dinner again beginning Sunday and can stay open until 11 p.m. But a limit of 4 people per table remains, and indoor dining is limited to 30% of capacity. While intra-regional travel bans have ended and curfews lifted, not all of the restrictions are being relaxed. Only 4 of the country's 19 regions and autonomous cities are keeping curfews in place. Regions can still restrict opening hours and impose capacity limits in bars and restaurants. They can also seek court approval for stricter measures, such as reimposing curfews, capping the number allowed at home gatherings, or extending a ban on internal travel. But the courts have offered different rulings, leading to a patchwork of measures across the country. Spain's number of new coronavirus infections in the past 14 days fell Friday to 198 new cases per 100,000 residents. Hospital occupation levels remain high, however, with more than 1 in 5 intensive care beds in the country treating COVID-19 patients. Spain has been one of the Europe's hardest hit nations during the pandemic, with nearly 79,000 deaths and 3.5 million infections. Back to you, Alma.
After midnight, it feels amazing. You know, it's been such a while that we need to confine in such small places, such as apartments and houses. You know, people will still party every day. We'll still party all the time. We just do it differently now.
Bueno, hem vingut a veure l'ambient, que ens ho hem pres una mica com si fos cap d'any, no? D'esperar que fossin les 12 per poder sortir al carrer i veure aviam si realment hi hauria molta gent o no, i sembla que sí, que hi ha tota gent jove per aquí fent festa.
Yes, yeah, so we wanted to take advantage of that. My friends and I have been here since October, and we haven't done a lot of traveling, so we really wanted to take advantage of our opportunity to finally go see something. Haven't seen much of Spain since I've been here, so I'd really like to visit a new place. Toledo, I hear, is very beautiful.
All right. Thank you very much for your update, Beverly. You keep safe and enjoy the lifting of restrictions. Enjoy yourself, but be
Thank you,
careful.
Alma. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you. Reporting from Barcelona, Spain, I'm Beverly Madrid. We live in interesting times.
In other news, Japan has now imposed strict border control due to the spread of new, more contagious strains of the virus. Japan is closing its borders until further notice to all new foreign arrivals, except foreign residents of Japan or under special circumstances. We have more from our EBC Japan Bureau Chief, Dennis Liu. Dennis.
Good evening, Alma and CJ. The Japanese government is strengthening its border control for travelers from India, which is seeing explosive growth in coronavirus infections due to the spread of new, more contagious strains of the virus. Japan is closing its borders until further notice to all new foreign arrivals except foreign residents of Japan or under special circumstances. Travelers arriving in Japan from India are currently obliged to stay at designated facilities for 3 days upon their arrival as part of a requested 14-day self-quarantine. Tokyo has designated India as a country where a coronavirus variant is spreading. It is currently undecided when regular tourists will again be able to enter the country, but it is unlikely to happen in considerable numbers before autumn 2021 after the end of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Under the current policy that bans new arrivals, only Japanese nationals and foreign residents with valid statuses are allowed to re-enter the country. If you can recall, I reported that a virus state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of Japan was extended on Friday, less than 3 months before the Olympics. Fukuoka and Aichi prefectures were added to 4 regions that have been under emergency measures for 2 weeks: Tokyo, Osaka, Hyogo, and Kyoto. The state of emergency restricts commercial activity, with bars and restaurants told to shut or stop serving alcohol. Some rules will soon be eased despite the extension, such as allowing a limited number of fans back into sports stadiums. The Japanese government and Olympic officials insist the virus-postponed games can go ahead safely this summer, although polls show most Japanese people support cancellation or another delay. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga was forced on the defensive on Monday. He insisted in Parliament today that he has never put the Olympics first and that his priority remains the lives and health of the Japanese people. This is the latest for now. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Now, back here in the country, the local government of Quezon City will exercise maximum tolerance in dealing with violators of the face mask ordinance. Now, since the imposition of the Enhanced Community Quarantine or ECQ in 2020, violators pay fines, according to Mayor Joy Belmonte in an interview. Now, she said it is a difficult time for most people who lost their jobs, so the city government tries to understand the violators by just issuing an ordinance violation receipt or OVR for those who cannot pay the fines right away. Mayor Belmonte said they will not detain violators to make sure physical distancing is followed, as detention facilities, even in police stations, may not offer enough space. Now, as of Friday, Belmonte said Quezon City has recorded 3,625 violators of the face mask ordinance, with 348 arrested and 1,139 given warnings.
Let us now head on over to Washington, D.C., where the nation's capital is expanding its vaccination options for 16 and 17-year-olds. Let's hear more from Rose Papa Angeles.
Thank you. DC Health announces that district residents 16 and 17 years old can now get vaccinated at walk-up sites and pharmacies across DC that are administering the Pfizer vaccine. Previously, DC Health was directing all 16 and 17-year-olds to register for a vaccination appointment through Children's National, which families can still do. However, beginning Friday, May 7, 16 and 17-year-olds can get vaccinated at the following district walk-up sites whenever they are open. Arena Stage, Fort Stanton Recreation Center, Lamont Recreation Center, Langdon Park Community Center, Rosedale Recreation Center, and Rice Demonstration Center. Safeway, CVS, and Walgreens pharmacies that are using the Pfizer vaccine can also vaccinate 16 and 17-year-olds. In addition to these walk-up sites and Children's National, 16 and 17-year-olds can also get vaccinated at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital and One Medical sites. Currently, 16 and 17-year-olds are only eligible to receive the 2-dose Pfizer vaccine. In Washington, D.C., Rose Papa Angeles, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thanks, Rose. German firm BioNTech said today that the COVID-19 vaccine it developed with Pfizer doesn't require any modifications at the moment to protect against variants of the virus. Nevertheless, in preparations for a need at some point to make tweaks to its current vaccine, the company said it began tests in March on a modified variant-specific version of its jabs. It said, quote, "The aim of this study is to explore the regulatory pathway that BioNTech and Pfizer would pursue if SARS-CoV-2 were to change enough to require an updated vaccine. An assessment is also ongoing on the impact of a possible third dose in prolonging immunity and in protecting against variants." BioNTech Chief Executive Ugur Sahin said in April that the vaccine works against the Indian variant. The BioNTech Pfizer vaccine was the first to win authorization in the West and has since been deployed in dozens of countries worldwide.
An expert committee set up by Norway's government to evaluate AstraZeneca's and Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccines said on Monday that both should be abandoned over risks of rare but very serious side effects. In order to avoid a slowdown of the vaccine rollout, the committee recommended that the two jabs should be made available for people on a voluntary basis. The committee's head, Lars Vorland, said they did not recommend the use of adenoviral vector vaccines in the National Immunization Program, as he handed in their report. From 134,000 injections of AstraZeneca's vaccine administered in Norway up until mid-March, 5 cases of severe thrombosis, 3 of them fatal, were reported in relatively young and previously healthy people. Another vaccine recipient died of a brain hemorrhage. Norway suspended AstraZeneca's vaccine on March 11, while its rare but potentially serious side effects were studied in more detail. On April 15, Norwegian health authorities recommended dropping the jab from the Anglo-Swedish drug maker, but the government chose to first set up a committee of experts to examine the risks associated with the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccines, which are both based on the same adenovirus technology. The European Medicines Agency and the World Health Organization both recommend continued use of the vaccine, arguing that the benefits far outweigh the associated risks. U.S. drug maker Johnson & Johnson's vaccine has not yet been deployed in the country, but rare cases of thrombosis have been reported in the U.S.
Meanwhile, flights were suspended after 2 people in Sydney tested positive for the virus. It was the third disruption since the quarantine-free travel bubble between New Zealand and Australia opened on April 18, almost 400 days after both closed their international borders due to the pandemic. The earlier stoppages to flights to and from Western Australia lasted only a few days, and the current travel pause with New South Wales would end at midnight Sunday. The Health Ministry said in a statement that the current assessment from New Zealand public health officials is that the risk to New Zealand from New South Wales remains low. New South Wales health officials said that despite extensive investigations, they hadn't identified how the lasted cases became infected. Although they believe there was a contact with a currently unidentified person who was infectious in the community. The trans-Tasman travel bubble between the largely coronavirus-free neighbors has been hailed as a major milestone in restarting a global travel industry that has been crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to the news. A 28-year-old man was shot dead near the international departure terminal at the Vancouver International Airport. Thomas I. Likeness of our EBC Canada Bureau has that story. Thomas.
Police are looking for suspects after a man was gunned down outside the international departures area of the Vancouver International Airport. As the gunman sped away, police intercepted their getaway vehicle. Police say the suspects shot at them, but no officers were hurt. The shooting is believed to be gang-related. It took place mid-afternoon Sunday. The airport, located in the city of Richmond, was closed for more than an hour. Police temporarily closed major routes to the city and shut down commuter train access to the airport. There has been a spate of gang-related gunplay in the Vancouver region since the beginning of the month. Several shootings have been in public places, as well as the airport. 2 of them took place in shopping malls. Canada's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair called the violence disturbing news. On Twitter, Blair said his thoughts are with the communities in the Vancouver region that have been impacted by gang and gun violence. Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Now to New Zealand now. A knife-wielding attacker stabbed 4 people in a supermarket today, critically injuring 3. In a rampage, authorities said was random and not terror-related. Take a look.
Yeah, they brought someone out. He was riding amongst them. They had him handcuffed and killed him off in a vehicle pretty quickly. You can see he had blood on him. And, well, by that stage, more police vehicles were arriving. A lot of people were very upset. You can imagine this was a beautiful, sunny Monday afternoon in peaceful old Dunedin, and this is going down, you know, right next door to our police station.
Police said the attack, highly unusual in the normally peaceful South Pacific nation, occurred at a Countdown supermarket in central Dunedin at 2:30 p.m. local time. and a man had been taken into custody. Witnesses told local media a man carrying 2 knives stabbed staff in the supermarket, and bystanders who tried to stop him were also injured. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said her first question to police was whether the Dundin attack had national security implications, but they assured her it didn't. Southern Police District Commander Paul Basham characterized the incident as a random attack and said the perpetrator would face court on Tuesday. The most recent mass casualty attack in New Zealand was the Christchurch mosque shooting in March 2019, when a white supremacist gunman murdered 51 Muslim worshippers and severely injured another 40. New Zealand introduced tough gun laws in the wake of that Christchurch attack to limit access to firearms.
In other news, more than 300 people were wounded Monday in renewed clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police in Jerusalem, Palestinian medics said, as an Israeli celebration of its 1967 takeover of the Holy City threatened to further inflame tensions. The violence was the latest in days of the worst such disturbances in Jerusalem since 2017, fueled by a long-running bid by Jewish settlers to take over nearby Palestinian homes in Israeli-annexed East Jerusalem. Despite mounting international condemnation, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he supported the Israeli police forces' just struggle amid the Jerusalem clashes. The Palestinian Red Crescent put the toll at 305 injured, including more than 200 who were hospitalized, 5 of them in critical condition. The United States expressed serious concerns about the situation. In a White House statement, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan encouraged the Israeli government to pursue appropriate measures to ensure calm during Jerusalem Day commemorations. Israel annexed East Jerusalem following the 1967 takeover, a move not recognized by most of the international community. Palestinians claim East Jerusalem as the future capital of a hoped-for independent state. Tensions have been rising over the threatened eviction of Palestinian families in East Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah district. The UN says Israel should call off any evictions and employ maximum restraint in the use of force against protesters. The League of Arab States has called on the international community to intervene to prevent any forced evictions. Israel's Supreme Court is expected to hold a hearing on the long-running legal case on Monday.
In other news, the Interior Ministry said a roadside bomb struck a bus in Afghanistan overnight, killing at least 11 people just hours before the Taliban announced a 3-day ceasefire to mark this week's Eid al-Fitr holiday. Now, the ministry said the attack in Restiv Zabul province left another 28 people wounded. Now, this comes also as the death toll from bombs planted outside a girls' school in an area of the Afghan capital populated largely by the Shiite Hazara community has risen to 50. Ministry spokesman Derek Arian told reporters a car bomb detonated in front of the Sayed al-Shuhada school on Saturday, and when the students rushed out in panic, 2 more bombs exploded. No group has so far claimed the attack, but Afghan officials, including President Ashraf Ghani, have blamed the Taliban. This comes as the U.S. military continues to pull out its last 2,500 troops from violence-racked Afghanistan, despite faltering peace efforts between the Taliban and Afghan government to end a decades-long war.
Meanwhile, Myanmar's deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi is all set to appear in person in court for the first time on May 24. During the latest hearing Monday, a judge ordered for her cases to be heard with her present in a special courtroom near her residence. Lawyer Kin Mong Zhao still cautioned that the outstanding issue of not being able to meet privately with her still remains. The 75-year-old former leader has been charged 6 times since her arrest. The charges include flouting coronavirus restrictions during last year's election campaign and possessing unlicensed walkie-talkies. The most serious charge alleges that she violated the country's colonial-era Official Secrets Act, a case that is pending in a court in commercial hub Yangon. The junta has also accused her of corruption, though no charges have been filed, alleging that she received bribes of gold bars and cash. The junta has continuously justified her arrest and the coup, alleging electoral fraud by her National League for Democracy party. The NLD swept November's elections in a landslide. The Nobel laureate has not been publicly seen since she was detained in the February 1 coup, when the military ousted her from power and reinstalled its rule. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the news. The Philippine economy likely expanded by 1.5% in the first 3 months of 2021, according to Moody's Analytics. This projection is better than the domestic economy's 8.3% output in the last quarter of last year. In a report dated May 7, released Monday, Moody's Analytics said risks to recovery have not mitigated. It said, quote, "The volatile course of the pandemic continues with the resurgence of COVID-19 cases in India and stronger waves in Japan and the Philippines, among others. High transmission risks from newer variants and slow vaccination rollouts, weakened by supply shortages or logistical snags, remain pertinent factors until countries aggressively move towards herd immunity." Economic managers said 2021 is a recovery year for the Philippines, with the gross domestic product or program target set between 6.5 to 7.5%. They lean this growth target on optimism on the government's COVID-19 vaccination program, as well as on high spending for infrastructure spending.
And good news, a total of 8,745 employees of the Manila City government will soon receive their mid-year bonus after Mayor Francisco or Isko Moreno Domagoso approved the release of 350 million pesos budget on Monday. Now, the budget will come from the 2021 executive budget. Let's listen in.
At may pera na. O, mga kapwa ko kawani, yung ating tuloy ang ating mid-year bonus. Sabi ko na eh. Makapalakpak si Julius, wagas eh. Ayan ha. O, basta kung ano yung due para sa inyo, o ibibigay natin. Kahit na talagang hirap na hirap tayo. Ay, hindi ko naman ho yan ikinukubli, ano? Ay, kahit sa totoo lamang po, parang yung bimpo, pigang-piga na. Pero, tayo, o kayo, kahit pa paano, tayo, ang dami na nawalan ng trabaho sa pandemya to. Tayo mga taong gobyerno, hindi tayo nawalan ng trabaho. So, tapos ngayon, meron pa tayong konting porbetsyo. Although karapatan natin to, pero siguro wala namang masama na suklian natin to ng tapat na paglilingkod and create an extra mile to serve the people.
He said under City Ordinance number 8702, or an ordinance appropriating the amount of 20 billion pesos under the General Fund Executive Budget of the City of Manila for year 2021, the 350 million pesos will be allocated for Manila's regular employees. He said this is to at least alleviate the difficulties of our employees in the city government because of the pandemic.
In other news, London Mayor Sadiq Khan launched a campaign on Monday to bring tourists back to the British capital ahead of a planned easing of government coronavirus restrictions across England. The £6 million campaign by Khan's office with the capital's tourism and transport bodies will look to dive domestic tourism to hospitality, culture, nightlife, and retail venues in the city. Khan, who on Saturday was re-elected for a second term as mayor, called the initiative the biggest domestic tourism campaign London has ever seen. The plans are designed to boost the sectors which have been badly hit by months of closures and lockdown curbs during the pandemic. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected on Monday to confirm the next stage of his government's roadmap out of lockdown from next week, including a return to indoors mixing and the reopening of cinemas and theaters.
Meanwhile, COVID jab maker BioNTech said it would build a Southeast Asia headquarters and manufacturing site in Singapore to produce hundreds of millions of mRNA-based vaccines per year. The German company said in a statement that construction of the site will start this year, and it could become operational by 2023. The Singapore production site will be the German company's first mRNA manufacturing facility outside Europe and will have an estimated capacity of several 100 million doses of such vaccines. The vaccine produced by BioNTech jointly with Pfizer of the U.S. became the first COVID-19 jab to be approved for use in the West late last year. It's now supplying more than 90 countries worldwide and is expecting to ramp up its production to up to 3 billion doses by the end of the year from 2.5 billion expected previously.
The U.S. government declared a regional emergency Sunday as the largest fuel pipeline system in the United States remained largely shut down 2 days after a major ransomware attack was detected. The Colonial Pipeline Company ships gasoline and jet fuel from the Gulf Coast of Texas to the populous East Coast through 5,500 miles of pipeline serving 50 million consumers. The company said it was the victim of a cybersecurity attack involving ransomware attacks that encrypt computer systems and seek to extract payments from operators. The emergency declaration allows for fuel to be transported by road to the affected states: Alabama, Arkansas, District of Columbia, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. The declaration also provides regulatory relief to commercial motor vehicle operations that are part of the emergency support efforts. Colonial said earlier Sunday that it had opened some smaller delivery lines, but the main system was not yet back up and running. Colonial, based in the southern state of Georgia, is the largest pipeline operator in the United States by volume, normally transporting 2.5 million barrels of gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products per day. The attack prompted calls from cybersecurity experts for improved oversight of the industry to prepare for future threats. Gas prices jumped in the United States on Sunday following the ransomware attack. Analysts warn that prices could climb even higher if the pipeline is not reopened soon. Oil prices rose more than 1% Monday.
And Philippine boxing great Manny Pacquiao is in the final stages of talks for a bout against American star Mikey Garcia. That is according to an aide to the Filipino fighter. The date and venue for a Pacquiao-Garcia matchup could be announced as early as next week, according to Jake Hodson, special assistant to the former 8-weight world champion. Now, local media reports said a July fight in Dubai was on the cards. Pacquiao, 42 years old now, has not fought since claiming the World Boxing Association's welterweight super world title with a stunning victory over Keith Thurman in Las Vegas in July 2019. Former 4-division world champion Garcia, who is 9 years younger, has also been idle since early 2020 when he beat Jesse Vargas on points. Garcia has just fanned the flames of his rumored proposed fight against Manny Pacquiao even more. In a video posted by Phil Boxing on Sunday, Garcia, who's 33 years old, shared he looks to visit the Philippines to possibly arrange a fight against Pacquiao, the only 8-division champion in the world. Garcia has always been vocal of his desire to fight Pacquiao since last year, and after the proposed fight between Pacquiao and American World Boxing Organization titleist Terence Crawford failed to come through, rumors of the Garcia-Pacquiao fight started to swirl. Now, Pacquiao, an elected senator in this country, said last year he wanted to fight Irish mixed martial arts star Conor McGregor back in this year, but the talks went nowhere. Garcia, beaten only once and with 30 of his 40 professional wins ending in knockouts, would pose a formidable challenge to Pacquiao, who has a 62-7 win-loss record with 2 draws over a 26-year boxing career.
International Committee or Olympic Committee Vice President John Coates was adamant Saturday that nothing could stop the Tokyo Olympics from going ahead despite ongoing risks from COVID-19. He said he believes the coronavirus postponed Tokyo Olympics can be a beacon of hope and optimism. Take a look.
I think that it also will act as a beacon of hope and optimism in a world that I hope is soon moving back to some type of normalcy. And that will take time. And I think sport is a great bridgehead. And I will go to my grave knowing that that has a profound impact. And I think these games will leave a strong, lasting legacy, not just for Japan, but at a time when the world is coming to terms with, some pretty, difficult and harrowing months. I do want to reassure certainly the people of Japan that we do take this very seriously, and we do, within our processes and protocols, have some very, very tried and tested measures, which we have had on display here as well.
Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide held talks with U.S. President Joe Biden in April and stressed the Asian nation was doing everything possible to contain COVID-19 infections and hold a safe and secure Olympics. But questions continue to be raised about the viability of the Games given the ongoing pandemic and a virus state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of Japan being extended on Friday. While Japan's COVID-19 outbreak remains much smaller than in many countries, with just over 10,500 deaths, its vaccine rollout is moving slowly, and polls show most Japanese support cancellations or another delay.
And in a related news, International Olympic Committee Chief Thomas Bach has been forced to postpone his visit to Japan, according to organizers, after a coronavirus state of emergency was extended less than 3 months before the Tokyo Games. Now, Bach's trip was scheduled for May 17 to the 18th, but organizers decided to postpone it based on various situations, including the government's extension of the virus state of emergency. Japanese media said organizers plan to reschedule Bach's visit for June. Now, Seiko Hashimoto, president of the Tokyo 2020 Games, said Friday it would be very difficult to arrange the visit given the state of emergency. Japan's state of emergency, which is less strict than blanket lockdowns in other countries, was last week extended to the end of May in the hardest hit regions, including Tokyo. An increasing number of sections of the Olympic torch relay have also been scaled back and moved off-road to prevent people from gathering to watch. Japanese media reported on Monday that 2 more regions will scrap the public torch relay. Hyogo Prefecture, which is under the state of emergency, and Okayama also seeing a surge in virus cases.
Finally, in our news, the New York Knicks showed why they are headed to the NBA playoffs for the first time in 8 years on Sunday as Derrick Rose scored 25 points in a 106-100 win over the Los Angeles Clippers. The Knicks used a combination of well-executed perimeter shooting and solid defense to break down Los Angeles and bust the game open in the second quarter before holding on in the fourth for their third win on a 6-game road swing. Rose came off the bench to deliver 8 assists, while Reggie Bullock scored 24 points and made 5 threes for the Knicks, who have 5 games left in the season and all against clubs headed to the postseason. R.J. Barrett added 18 points and Julius Randle chipped in 14 points and 14 rebounds as the Knicks went a perfect 9 for 9 from the free throw line. Clippers top scorer Kawhi Leonard was kept off his game, making just 9 of 26 shots from the floor to finish with 29 points. The Knicks improved to 38-30 to hold on to the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, just in front of the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. Exciting times in the NBA. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.